The problem for him, meaning Donald Trump, is that this is one of the things that Americans notoriously don't like and don't accept and don't get desensitized to. If Americans hate one thing, it's the government telling us what to do. Yeah, I completely agree. I had somebody in my comments yesterday talking about Donald Trump trying to send the military into Portland after failing in LA and failing in DC and then backing down on Chicago and then threatening to send troops to Memphis. But I'm hearing from people in Memphis today that there are no troops there. So just to be really clear here, they've authorized the use of up to 200 National Guard troops in Portland, Oregon. And our Attorney General has not only filed a lawsuit to block the deployment or mobilization is the correct word actually of troops to Portland or anywhere in Oregon. They've also filed for an emergency TRO to stop them being sent here in the first place. Anyway, in my comments where I was talking about that issue, I had somebody say, don't you understand? He's desensitizing you all. He's desensitizing you to the military being deployed in American cities. He's normalizing the presence of troops in your cities. And I was like, no. I'm sorry, but we are not going to be desensitized to our federal troops, be they National Guard, be they Marines like he tried in California. We are not going to be desensitized to that. And this is precisely what I mean when I talk about the backlash effect, right? Every action that the regime undertakes, that creates an opportunity either for them, like totally unforced, to piss off the American people, or for us to help the American people understand why what the regime is doing is bad. It is hurting us. It is infringing upon our rights. It is making our lives more difficult. It is deeply un-American, right? So sometimes the regime does something and all on their own, right? That action in and of itself, everybody immediately understands how bad it is. And sometimes people need a little bit of education. Sometimes people need to have the situation explained to them because so many Americans are like fairly checked out. I think it can be easy for people like you and I to think that everybody is really plugged into politics, that everybody is really well informed and everybody really cares. But we know that most Americans, they actually aren't like politics nerds. And to be fair, the only reason that I am a politics nerd is because I'm a permaculture person and I operate under the 3 ethics of earth care, people care, and fair share. And those are incredibly political concepts. And so I don't feel that it's possible for me to live out my 3 ethics in the United States of America without being involved in politics. I'm not somebody who's like a law nerd or a poli-sci nerd in general. It was my passion for regenerative living and sustainable local food systems that got me politically activated. But your average American is fairly checked out. They often vote on like, hey, things are not going great now, so I'm going to vote for the other guy, or they have just a couple of issues that they are monitoring. So most Americans are not as deep in the weeds of politics as you or I may be. So sometimes they are rather oblivious to how negative the impact is unless we educate them, unless we get the word out. Right? Sometimes we got to shine a little light on the situation because corporate legacy media in this country is very much a propaganda arm of the regime, and the way that they frame things is definitely not going to be accurate, especially if you're looking at older Americans who are watching Fox News, or maybe they're reading the Washington Post or what have you. We got to make sure that we're letting them know what's really happening and we are accurately depicting the harm that the regime is trying to do. But in this case, like, you have to live with troops in your city. It's right in your face. You can't ignore what's happening, but likewise, you're not going to be desensitized to it, right? It's like that line from that Crosby, Stills and Nash song. It increases my paranoia, like looking in the mirror and seeing a police car. Right, like it's not normal to see tanks and armored vehicles in United States cities. That's what happens in cities that are run by petty dictators. That's what happens in places like North Korea and in Vladimir Putin's Russia. We in the United States are not accustomed to and will not become accustomed to seeing soldiers heavily armed, full of body armor in our streets. Look at what's happening with ICE. The more we see these thugs out and about, look at the polling data, the more resentment is building against them, the more popular opposition to what ICE is doing is growing. The same thing with the military. Already the American people are deeply opposed to having the military sent into our cities. And If people were kind of ignorant about it or they were on the fence, once they have the military sent into a city where they live, those people suddenly are like, what the fuck is no. No, there's no reason for this. The way that the regime is describing my city is entirely inaccurate. It's a bunch of hogwash, and there is no reason for our troops to be sent here and used as political pawns. Oh, and by the way, there's no reason for the regime to spend hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars on this. It's not going to be normalized for us. It's not going to desensitize us. If anything, it is galvanizing the resistance movement. It is building popular opposition. People don't want to live like this in the United States of America. People are not going to be conditioned to accept this. Why? Because we have hundreds of years of refusing to accept this. There's a reason people still talk about Kent State, how many decades later, as like a horrific, black mark on our history. Donald Trump has repeatedly said that he wants to wage war on American cities against American civilians. And in that speech to our military leaders with Pete Hegseth, Whiskey Leaks Day Drunk Pete, he said he wanted to use civilians in American cities. You notice that he targeted cities with Democratic mayors and Democratic governors. He wants to use American citizens, American civilians, as military targets for our military to conduct training exercises, aka intimidation. That's not how we do things in America. And I very much go back to this sentiment from Knitting Cult Lady that, like, at the end of the day, Americans are jerks. I know that we're looking at a chunk of MAGA who are bootlicking Donald Trump real hard. The same party that used to jerk off to the Constitution is now like, here, Daddy Donald, take away our rights. The majority of Americans are not like that. And I think even the majority of Republicans are not like that. I think it's always really good to remember that a minority of Americans voted for Donald Trump. A minority of registered voters voted for Donald Trump. Trump didn't even get 50% of the vote. He has never had a mandate from the people. And as time has gone on, opposition to him grows. He is underwater on every single issue. Yes, I completely agree with this comment here. We are not going to get desensitized to this. Americans are just going to get pissed off at this. We already are getting pissed off at this. This is going to take normal, everyday Americans who are just trying to keep their heads down and were pretty checked out. They weren't big politics nerds, and it is going to activate them. It already is activating them. This is that backlash effect that Trump's actions are creating all on their own, and then we can be responsible to educate people. That's one of the reasons I think it's so important to show images and footage of what it looks like in Portland, Oregon right now, because we do have people who don't live here, who believe the lies of Fox News, who maybe they're like Donald Trump and they're watching footage from 2020, around the Apple store, and they think that that is what's happening right now. So we still have a responsibility and obligation to help educate people, to help enhance that backlash effect by making sure that people get accurate information. But all on its own, the presence of troops in our cities is going to build the resistance. It's definitely going to demoralize the military. It's definitely going to make the military much less likely to comply with illegal orders from the regime. We know that if the military is put in our cities, that gives us a chance to interact with our neighbors, with our fellow Americans in uniform, and to talk to them. You don't want to do this. This is not what you signed up for. Did you think when you took an oath to defend the Constitution and your fellow Americans, did you think that Donald Trump was going to use you to target American civilians, to wage war against Americans? Is this what you want to be doing? Because I don't think so. We know that when the time comes, you won't shoot at us. We know that when the time comes, you'll do the right thing. Right, that creates yet another layer of not only the backlash of putting troops in our cities, but then we get to work to engage with members of the military. We get to engage with our neighbors who are like, why the fuck are there tanks in our neighborhood? We get to educate people. We get to help people wake up. We get to help people become activated and join the resistance. The more Trump tries to pull this shit, the more it's going to backfire. And we have a job now to do to make sure that that backlash that he creates is massive.